Okay. Wait, I just realized I spelled Ferrari with three R's.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, like as in like Ferrari.
Oh, yeah, I've just seen it now. Yeah.
No, basically a car for furries. So that yeah.
Yeah, good enough.
Oh well. Anyways, hey guys, I hope you're doing all right, and welcome to the Racing Line podcast presented by B1N44 and Sir Sid, yours truly. And for our first episode, we're going to be doing a full season review of the 2021 Formula One season. I mean, what a season! Obviously, before we get into it, what are our initial thoughts, Raj?
I have been watching F1 for 3 years, and I want to say this is definitely one of the best seasons I've ever seen. It was so close for the championship, and for once, for the Drivers' Championship, for once, it wasn't just the two Mercedes teammates fighting. It was someone out of Mercedes, which really just like added some spice to it, I guess you could say. And it got so close at the end, and I think everyone who watches F1 can agree that that might be one of the best season finales ever.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the small but also like immense issue that was Michael Massey and like the race directors, I feel like that was like an amazing season. Had there not been like so much interference in terms of politics, I feel like that would have been one of like the greatest championship battles and finales ever. Alas, that wasn't really the case. But I'm sure like everyone still enjoyed it, and I'm not going to complain because we still got an amazing season of racing. But anyway, let's rewind all the way to the beginning at Bahrain. So, Siraj, how was our season opener?
It was a very good way to open the season. You know, Bahrain, it's been a long time since Bahrain has actually been the season opener for an F1 calendar, and it definitely was a very good choice. Like, the race in itself wasn't the most interesting, but then with the different strategy calls, and then when we got to the end, we saw a very immense fight between Hamilton and Verstappen. You know, we saw, I believe it was at turn four, we saw Verstappen try to go around the outside of Hamilton, and well, everyone thought that he'd made it work, but then the steward said that he had to give that position back to Hamilton, and at the end of it, Hamilton won by 7/10 of a second, which is barely anything when you look at it.
I mean, of course, that little instance was the first time we saw the stewards, uh, let's be honest, on something. Because earlier on, we saw Hamilton exceed quote unquote track limits quite a few times during each of the sessions, but the stewards didn't do anything about that. But then when Verstappen did it, he was told to give the position back. So obviously, we're starting to see that inconsistency there. Uh, but anyway, further down the grids, Nikita Mazepin. I mean, wasn't the best. F1 debut lasted about one braking zone and three turns. Uh, but we move on. Um, in other news, Sergio Perez, he was obviously at his debut for Red Bull. Kind of died on his way to the grid. I mean, he was starting from P11, which obviously wasn't that good. Uh, Probably made Helmut Marko uh like torture him quite a bit. But he had to start from the pits, which was worse because his car just sort of died on its way to the grid. But he still managed to recover and got pretty decent points. So yeah. So Siraj, race number two at Imola.
Yeah, another very interesting one. Another as like Bahrain, it was very action packed. I guess you could say. Even just from lights out, we at turn one, Verstappen starting from P3. Perez's best ever start with Red Bull. I mean, it's only been two races, but he started P2 alongside Hamilton, who was on pole. And then at turn one, Verstappen absolutely sent it up the inside, gave Hamilton a bit of bodywork damage, I believe. And from then on, the action just never stopped. We got to the point where Hamilton, when he was just cutting his way through the back markers, by the time he got to lapping, I believe it was one of the Williams, he actually ended up not crashing with the Williams, but going into the wall and going off into the gravel. And then when trying to recover it, he actually ended up breaking his wing. And then we had an incident, I think we can say, between Bottas and Russell. And what happened? Yeah, so basically, I don't really know who's to blame for that. I still remember it. I feel like it might have been a bit of Bottas's fault, but maybe a bit of both. We had a crash between them both, and I guess it really helped out Hamilton because he could go and change his front wing, but I guess it didn't help him out too much because Verstappen still ended up winning.
Yeah, I mean, for one, it just shows like how Russell and Bottas, like their allegiance to Mercedes and Hamilton, like bringing out the red flag just seconds after Hamilton went off. I mean, top tier work from both of them. I'm pretty sure Toto was quite happy after that one. Um, Also, I did discuss this with Siraj prior to recording that we were going to say the full title of this race. So, like, I mean, he didn't do it at the start. I'm very disappointed in you. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna just say it right now. So it was the Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio del Made in Italy del Emilia Romagna 2021. Full stop.
Oh, I wasn't going to be able to say that anyway.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, in other news, Lando Norris did get his first podium of the season, a solid P3 result. And his teammate was a bit further down in, I believe it was P6. So yeah, pretty decent race overall. As for the crash, I mean, I'd say that was a racing incident, but like, yeah, it was just a racing incident. Like, there's nothing more to say. Obviously, I mean, Bottas just sort of defended as you would, and Russell just like got on the grass, and obviously the conditions were very tricky at the time, so they just came together. Um, what really confuses me is why Russell was fighting Bottas down in what was like P10. Um, so I mean, yeah, I don't think it should have happened in the first place. But anyways, moving on to Spain. I mean, that was oh sorry, Portugal. We forgot to talk about Portugal, didn't we, Siraj?
Yeah, yeah, we did.
Oh,
All
oops.
I've got here is boring.
Oh, I think I deleted it from my script.
Oh,
Oh, I mean, yeah, it was kind of boring, wasn't it? Because it was just,
bloopers.
yeah, bloopers. We're not gonna cut this. Okay,
Oh, are we not?
I don't think so. But anyway,
Oh,
yeah, it was just Hamilton from Verstappen from Bottas from Perez. So I mean, there's not really much to say there. I mean, the track itself is like amazing to like drive, from what I've seen at least. Um, yeah, but we didn't really get too much action, and we could kind of say the same for Spain. Because for here, I just got they removed the one overtaking opportunity, which was I believe turn 10, was it? Uh,
probably. I think
yeah,
turn
like
10.
yeah, the hard braking zone after the second DRS straights. Um, don't quote me on that. And because of that, it was again another ball fest. This time Verstappen. Oh yeah, no, this time Hamilton won from Verstappen, further extending his championship lead. Uh, but anyways, Monaco, Siraj, what happens?
Again, a very interesting one. If we just go a little bit back, still in Monaco, but if we just look at qualifying, one of the first signs that the Ferrari car is actually good when the track is right, the Ferrari can actually be a good car. And in Q3, we saw Charles Leclerc putting in a lap for P1. And when he went out for his second flying lap, he ended up crashing at the swimming pool chicane and brought out the red flag, denying people like Verstappen a chance at stealing pole position. And then everyone was thinking that maybe there'd have to be a gearbox change for Charles Leclerc. But Ferrari, being Ferrari, didn't bother to check. And when they woke up on Sunday morning, they realized that they couldn't start the race with that car and there was not enough time to fix it. So, yeah, Charles Leclerc couldn't start his own home Grand Prix. And yeah, well, from there, the Monaco Grand Prix wasn't the most interesting, I guess you could say. Verstappen won from Carlos Sainz and then Lando Norris.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen basically won because of Bottas. I feel like Bottas could have won, had his pit stop not been 43 hours long. Um, Obviously, I mean that's quite good for like Ferrari standards, but I mean this is Mercedes. I mean they've had blunders before, like Sakir last year, but I mean still 43 hours. to get a wheel off a car. It's like a bit disappointing. But anyways, Sainz and Norris both on the podium. Love to see that. Um, we also got Lance Stroll's moment in the limelight as he got memed for the TV directors being on drugs. But yeah, on to Azerbaijan. Now Baku has like historically been like a really interesting race, and I feel like this was not different. First of all, we saw Pirelli being on, yeah, you guessed it, drugs, as both Stroll and Verstappen got punctures on the pit straight. For Verstappen's puncture, they ended up red flagging the session. At this point, people like just completely thought that Lewis had this in the bag. He was like going to restart from P2, overtake Perez, who was just ahead of him, and just cruise on to the victory. But his brakes were on drugs, so he missed out on the win. So Perez won from Vettel and Gasly, which I was very happy about. Yeah, so Raj, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a quite an interesting Grand Prix to watch. At the end when we saw the restart, Hamilton deciding to just go straight on at turn one, not bothering to turn left. And yeah, we managed to see a race where Nikita Mazepin managed to beat Lewis Hamilton. And I have no idea why Mercedes didn't decide to sign Mazepin for that. Honestly, I have no idea.
I mean, like, Russell was like DNF'd out of that race. I mean, Mazepin finished ahead of Lewis. Like, come on. I mean, I'm actually disappointed in Mercedes. Um, but anyways, we move on. France. I mean, it wasn't too bad for strategy. I mean, we saw a lot of work between teammates, but ultimately it was like your generic Verstappen winning from Hamilton. Um, was there anything interesting that time? Because I've got boredom again.
Yeah, well, Verstappen basically just did a good strategy call, did what Hamilton did to him in Spain, and he pitted twice and ended up having the much quicker tyres and overtook Lewis before the end. And woo, Verstappen's won next race.
Yeah, on to Stereo. For this, I've just got fans raising global temperatures by about 15 with all that orange smoke. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure they gave a warning to the fans to like not do too much of it. But obviously they didn't really listen. Verstappen ended up winning from Lewis. Um, anything else to add to that?
I mean, I guess if we just talk a bit about Lando Norris, I believe he started P3 yet again at an Austrian Grand Prix, and unfortunately was, I feel, just not aggressive enough, and I think ended up finishing P5, which is still very very good for the McLaren, but what could definitely have been a podium, looking at where he was in that situation.
Yeah, but I mean, just to correct you, it wasn't an Austrian Grand Prix. It was the Formula One BWT Grosser Preis des Steiermark 2021. Uh, just saying.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that. But anyways, moving on to the Formula One BWT Grosser Preis von Österreich 2021. Verstappen won again, this time from Bottas and then Lando. Lewis ended up finishing a rather disappointing P4. I forgot why that was.
Yeah, I don't remember. But all I remember is that Lando was, he again qualified P3, and I think he must have learned from the week before because he was very, very aggressive. I believe it was on lap one only that at turn four, he ended up pushing Sergio Perez off the track. I don't believe it was really his fault, but anyway, stewards decided to give him a 5 second time penalty. And we saw fights, including Perez later on, when he forced Charles Leclerc off the track twice, and I believe he also got a penalty for that. So yeah, many penalties in that race, but I guess an okay result for people like Lando and Max.
Yeah, I'd also just like to add Sebastian Vettel, who was obviously fighting former teammate Kimi Raikkonen um, during the last few laps, and they ended up making contact. Vettel DNF'd, and I'm actually astonished by this, but he DNF'd and he still finished ahead of the two Haas cars, which I mean, like, how do you achieve this sort of stuff? Like, Siraj, can you like, explain this?
No, you know what? Maybe Mercedes shouldn't have thought about signing Mazepin. Maybe they should have thought about signing Vettel.
No, no, it was the car. They should have still signed Mazepin.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Like, the results don't matter. He finished
Oh
the
yeah.
race. He finished the race on lap 69. All right, don't forget that.
Yeah. Fine. That's okay.
Yeah. Uh, Anyways, jokes aside, moving on to Britain, we saw the debut of the sprint race, which no one really cared about. Um, all it did was kind of mess up George Russell's chances of points. Obviously, the Williams driver managed to get P7 in qualifying, which I mean was astonishing, but the best was yet to come, as we'll soon find out. But he did get a penalty for some contact early on in the sprint. But yeah, it was the race that everyone was talking about, wasn't it, Siraj?
Yeah, it was a lot. Like in the sprint, we saw, as you said, Russell making contact with signs going into left field, and then later on we had
Did you like drop
in,
something there?
yeah, I did. I did in
I'm
the
gonna try
actual
not to
race.
cut. I'm gonna try not to cut anything from this.
Oh no. Okay, let's just go through that again.
Yeah, for all those
And
listeners, Siraj just dropped something, so
yeah,
we'll go again.
so yeah, in the sprint race, we saw George Russell making contact with Carlos Sainz into Luffield, and then in the actual race itself, we didn't really see a lot of George Russell, but lap one, a fight between Hamilton and Verstappen maybe went a little bit over the edge as into cops. We saw Hamilton trying to send it up the inside of Max Verstappen, and they crashed, and Max Verstappen ended up hitting the wall at 51 Gs, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were all glad that Verstappen was okay. I feel like what actually happened was, I mean, obviously Verstappen took the lead um, into like the first few turns. Uh, this later led to Toto Wolff just telling Lewis to just like completely assassinate him. I guess he kind of did that. Uh, but I guess the real winner out of this was Charles Leclerc. He managed to slip it through on the inside of both of them, and actually led most of the race until Lewis just hunted him down, overtook him rather, in the last few laps, and won. But a pretty nice P2 for Charles Leclerc, and Valtteri Bottas rounding off the top three. On to Hungary. This time it was Bottas' turn to assassinate Red Bull cars. This time he got 2 for 1. Bottas managed to hit Norris into turn 1. Norris ended up taking out Perez, and then Bottas ended up taking out Verstappen. All in all, it was a pretty good strike in terms of bowling for him. Uh, so I mean, yeah, I mean, jokes aside, he just sort of misjudged his braking. Again, the conditions were very tricky. We saw Stroll do a similar thing into turn 1. This time he took out Leclerc, and then Leclerc took out Ricciardo. So that was basically quite a few big names. So that was basically a Mercedes, both Red Bulls and both McLarens, a Ferrari, and an Aston Martin, just like done in the space of one braking zone. Following the red flag, Mercedes' strategy people showed that they were on drugs, as they made the restart on wet tyres, meaning Lewis was the only person to actually start the race properly. Later on, there was a bit of like confusion as Russell managed to jump like 5 cars. So the standings were literally George Russell from Ocon and then Vettel and so on. For a moment, I was like, wait, is this really happening? Yeah, but then he was asked to. Oh no, wait. Yeah, no, it was Latifi and P3 as well. But later he was asked to give the places back. So in the end, we saw a pretty sweet battle between Ocon and Vettel for the win, whilst Hamilton was trying to make his way through the field. But yeah, Ocon won from Vettel. Vettel got his second podium of the season, but then was later disqualified as Aston Martin were on drugs and didn't fuel the car properly. So yeah, Siraj, any final thoughts on that one?
Uh, if I remember correctly, driver of the day went to Fernando Alonso for a good reason. He fended off Hamilton for, what was it, 10 laps in an Alpine, which is mad, absolutely mad. And yeah, Fernando showed that he still has that skill that he had all those years ago. And as I just said, fended off Hamilton for like 10 laps. And as Ocon said, he was probably the reason that Ocon managed to win that Grand Prix.
Yeah, it was really good to see like that great teamwork between both Alpine drivers. I really feel like if they can deliver a car that both drivers can like challenge, like properly challenge the likes of McLaren and Ferrari and Aston Martin if they manage to pull their socks up into 2022. But it's on to Belgium, and I said before we were yet to see the best of George Russell. He managed to get P2 in qualifying, beating out the likes of Lewis, Ricardo, Vettel, Gasly, Ocon, Leclerc. That was actually insane. Also, GG's to Latifi, who managed to get into Q3, and he actually qualified P9, which was actually quite decent. But yeah, mad quali. We were all so excited for the race that was going to happen on Sunday. And did that race happen, Siraj?
No, no, I'm just going to be honest, it didn't. We got a few laps under the safety car. We got many, many hours of spectators waiting to see anything happen. And yeah, it wasn't very good. I think maybe you could say the most interesting part of that race was probably the podium.
Now, for me, the most interesting part was the Williams duck floating along the pit lane.
Oh yeah.
I think that was before FP1, but still, like, I really that was quite funny. Um, but yeah. Anyways, on to Holland. Orange. Anyways, thank you guys so much for. Okay, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There was quite a bit of orange that race. Verstappen won his home Grand Prix. For like first Dutch driver to do that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the race itself was actually a bit dull. Obviously, it was really fun to like watch the cars go around that track because obviously you got those bank turns and it's like really nice and smooth. But yeah, Verstappen won from Hamilton and then Bottas. Bottas was told to abort fastest lap, but of course he wasn't going to listen to that, was he? Yeah, he ended up taking fastest lap, so I'm pretty sure they had to pit Lewis again to get fastest lap, right, Siraj?
Yeah, I think they had to because Bottas didn't bother to listen to the team that he was going to end up leaving.
Yeah, I mean, like, fair enough, you're going to leave them anyway, so, like, you may as well.
Yeah, do some damage.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, on to Italy. Probably my favourite race of the season. You can probably tell I support McLaren by now. Um, but I mean, Daniel Ricciardo, what a drive. I mean, of course, it was kind of down to both Hamilton and Verstappen colliding. Verstappen basically mounted Hamilton. That's not what she said. Or maybe. Was it Siraj? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, so Verstappen collided with Hamilton, gave him a bit of a trim, as it were. So Ricardo won from Bottas and then Norris. Wasn't it a 1-2 for McLaren?
Yeah, it was.
No,
It
because
was
on the
Ricardo to Norris to Bottas.
no, because on the standings it says Ricardo, Bottas, Norris.
No way.
Oh wait, no, no, no. I'm looking at fastest laps. Oops. Yeah, no, it was Ricardo from Norris from Bottas. So yeah, it was a pretty happy podium. Of course, Zach Brown got on there. And they shared shoeies and all that. All the while Bottas was just like vibing. Oh, not I wouldn't say vibing. He was just depressed. Like he was like about 5 meters away from them, just like enjoying his champagne on his own, kind of like me.
Oh,
Uh, but Siraj, Russia is your driver.
it is my driver. He managed to do it. Lando Norris. What a qualifying session for everyone, but what a session for him. He managed to put it on pole. Um, yeah, that Russell was the first to gamble and go on the soft tires. And when he did, the lap came together for him. I believe at the end of Q3, the order was Norris from Sainz from Russell, which I don't think anyone could have predicted going into that weekend.
Yeah, apologies to anyone whose ears was kind of like deafened, because like, did you like adjust your mic or something? Because like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Uh, yeah, but that was amazing qualifying session, of course. Tricky conditions again on the wets, but the race. I mean, first Russian Grand Prix, like that didn't put me to sleep, I guess. Of course, it was pretty smooth sailing for Norris. Um, him and Sainz actually did battle for the first bit of the race, but then Norris just sort of had it under control. But then the rain started to fall, and Norris showed that he was on drugs and didn't pit for inters, unlike Hamilton, who was like rapidly closing behind him. So Norris ended up going off because he was still on worn out hards when the rain was falling so heavily. It was like definitely time for inters. So Hamilton had just caught up in a matter of laps, in literally in like, yeah, it was like less than a lap, and didn't really have to overtake Lando because like Lando just went off. Hamilton won. GG's to Verstappen though. He got a penalty and pretty sure he started last. But he fought his way all the way up back to P2, and Sainz rounded off the podium. So I mean, I know I can't see you, Zaroj, but I could just like hear your tears. Like,
Uh, yeah, whatever it is, it happens. He'll win
that's
next year.
that's racing.
Yeah.
Uh, Turkey. Now I don't remember a lot that happened in Turkey, so I'm just gonna assume it was a bit of a bullfest. But I mean, GG's to Valtteri Bottas. He won his only race of the season for Mercedes. Kind of unacceptable that he only won one race, considering he's in a Mercedes. I mean, to be fair, Sergio Perez did only won one race for Red Bull, but you could argue he was a much better wingman. It was also his first season in the car. Um, yeah, I don't know what Bottas was on this season. I mean, he got a win, so that's something, I guess.
At least Bottas did better than he did last year at Turkey. So I guess it's a
Oh yeah,
plus.
yeah. I guess there's that. I mean, he didn't like spin about 700,000 times. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyways, on to USA. Of course, we're heading into the tail end of the season. Only like 6 races to go. It was really heating up between the two. Uh, During this race, Verstappen won from Hamilton. He ended up taking the lead of the championship, going into the final few races, and it was really crunch time, wasn't it, Siraj?
Yeah, this was the part of the season where Hamilton and Verstappen were kind of the part where they were so close to like exchanging the championship lead every single race, and it was getting to the point where every F1 fan was like, I do not know who's going to win this. It was so close between the two.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they nearly made contact on the first lap into turn one, but they kept it clean, and yeah, Verstappen ended up winning from Hamilton from Perez. Um, Hamilton did try an alternate strategy to try catch back up to Verstappen, but that didn't work. Yeah, that just didn't work. Meanwhile, Bottas was way down in P6, um, living life, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, anyways, on to Mexico. again, Verstappen got back-to-back wins, further extending his championship leads. Um, and yeah, it was the same top three as USA. It was like no one really celebrated more than Perez and his family, right, Raj?
Yeah, of course. Like when we went into that weekend, Perez said that, oh, it's my dream to, get a podium here. The ultimate dream would be to get a win here, but even if he got a podium, he would be joyful. And I remember going to this race because the championship was so close between Hamilton and Verstappen. There are people saying, oh, if Perez is in the lead of this Grand Prix somehow, and if Verstappen's in second, is there a chance Red Bull will tell Perez to let Hamilton get in front, to let Verstappen get in front of him so that he could have some extra points and like deny Perez a race win at his home Grand Prix, which was a big talking point. But nonetheless, Perez ended up finishing third. And as you said, the celebrations were immense.
Yeah, I mean, if that scenario had happened, I would have like shot up Red Bull's office, even though I wouldn't have the facilities for that, big man. I'm actually so funny. But yeah, on to Brazil. Now, for the first time in quite a bit, we saw Lewis win, this time from Verstappen. Um, we saw again how the stewards were on, you guessed it, drugs. As Hamilton tried to go for a move on the outside, Verstappen pushed him off. Both cars went wide, and somehow that's like not worthy of investigating. Like, even though both cars went off, I mean, I honestly don't know what to make of that. I mean, apparently, after looking at footage, we saw that Verstappen didn't actually like turn right into the left-hander. I mean, still, come on, like, you could have done something at least. Uh, in other news involving the stewards and Verstappen and Hamilton, uh, Verstappen ended up getting a £50,000 fine, euro fine rather, for touching Hamilton's rear end. No, that's not what she said. Again, right, Raj.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess there was other news also to do with Hamilton. I don't remember the numbers, but I believe when his rear wing would open for DRS, it was 0.8 millimeters bigger than it should have been, which the stewards thought was penalty worthy, and they disqualified him from qualifying and sent him all the way to the back of the grid for the sprint qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the sprint, I don't think Hamilton would have won that because during the sprint, Hamilton was on it. He got, I think, something like P5 for Sunday's
Yeah,
race.
P5.
Um, yeah, without sprint, I doubt Hamilton would have like been uh even close to the likes of Verstappen, Bottas, and Perez. Um, but honorable mention in Mexico, I forgot to mention actually. Nicholas Latifi managed to lap both of the Haas cars. Yeah, that that happens, believe it or not. But we move on. Hopefully they'll do something next season. Um, but yeah, on to Qatar. Now, people weren't expecting that much action this race because obviously the circuit's designed mainly for MotoGP and not for F1. So because F1 cars they don't really overtake that well or follow other cars that well um, in corners like that, which are like really swooping at medium speed. Um, but Siraj, that wasn't really the case, was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite an interesting Grand Prix. We saw the likes of Alonso managing to really stay high up the grid, and then joy for Alonso after he crossed the line in P3. And as it is in the script, Hamilton won again, making the championship even closer going into the last two races.
Yeah. We also got to see everyone's tires being on for the second time this season. As there were like a bunch of punctures, namely for I believe Bottas, Latifi, Russell, um, pretty sure either Ricardo or Norris. Um,
Norris.
yeah, Norris. Yeah, but there are a bunch of punctures. Um, but yeah, on to Saudi Arabia now. 2 races to go in this F1 season. The last thing we need is for Michael Massey to intervene and do something that could mess this fight up. And I mean, you could argue he didn't, because ultimately both drivers were equal on points heading into the final race. But like, again, he shouldn't really be intervening like that, and he should really make decisions much better, shouldn't he, Siraj?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of action. I guess you could say that the first 10 laps weren't the most interesting ones ever. But I guess one interesting part came in the form of Mick Schumacher binning it at, I believe, was turn 22 and bringing out the first red flag. And on the restart of that, we had Ocon, we had Ocon from Hamilton from Verstappen, I believe. And then there was just a lot of controversy.
Yeah, I mean, but prior to the restart, Massey was like to Red Bull, hey, I'm gonna offer you P2, right? And then Red Bull were like, oh yeah, so Ocon's ahead of us, right? And then Massey's like, oh yeah, wait, give me a minute. And then he's like, oh yeah, we'll offer you P3. Do you want to take it? And then like, at this point, I'm like, why are you asking if he wants to take it? He shouldn't have a choice in this decision, because like you're
Yeah.
the one in power. Yeah, but after that, there was a second red flag after we saw like a pretty big fight. I wouldn't say fight, yeah, but like a pretty big crash further down the back of the grid involving the likes of Mazepin, Russell, Leclerc, Perez, and during that restart, we saw the stewards wondering who is going to start ahead of who. And I feel like I'm pretty sure it resulted in Verstappen starting ahead of Hamilton and then Ocon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. After that, Hamilton began to close in on Verstappen. Tried to move on the outside. Verstappen took the dodgy line into the corner. Verstappen's later told to give the position back. Verstappen just stops halfway down the straight. Hamilton's confused as stewards at this point haven't told him to overtake him. And yeah, at this point, so they go into each other. They touch each other. And at this point, I'm like, what was that supposed to be? And the stewards are doing nothing about this for the next 5 laps or so, which I don't understand. I mean, Hamilton's got a damaged front wing. Toto's table is completely smashed, and Verstappen's just cruising off. So later, Verstappen's asked to give the position back again. This time, he lets Hamilton through, but immediately overtakes him into the next turn. Then he lets him through again for some reason. And then, yeah, Verstappen's tyres began to fall off. So Hamilton cruised through to take the win ahead of Verstappen. Verstappen ended up getting 15 seconds worth of penalties, but that didn't really make a dent in his championship hopes rather. But honourable mention to Valtteri Bottas, who managed to overtake Ocon literally on the line. Where's my oh my god, my phone's ringing. Give me a minute.
So yeah, moving on to Abu Dhabi, and we had, as I said earlier, probably one of the most interesting season enders ever. Season finale of the 2021 season, and I don't know what happened. I think maybe too many things happened. We had quite a good qualifying session, and many people know that whoever starts on pole for this Grand Prix ends up winning. It's happened for, I think, the past 5 years. Whoever started on pole, whatever happened to them in the race, they would still find a way to win. Hamilton tried to question that after overtaking Verstappen at turn 1 on lap 1. And it didn't make the Red Bull garage very happy. Of course, Verstappen and Hamilton entered this Grand Prix equal on points, and it didn't help Verstappen that he had been overtaken by Hamilton on literally the first corner of the Grand Prix, where we had about a lap later, I believe, on lap 2, where Verstappen tried to resend it up the inside of Hamilton at the end of the first main straight, the first DRS straight. And, well, he almost made contact with Hamilton before Hamilton decided to just cut the chicane. And he ended up keeping the lead of the Grand Prix, even though Verstappen was demanding the FIA to let him get ahead of Hamilton after
Yeah,
he believed.
bye, mum. Yeah, I love you too. Alright, bye. Where were we?
Yeah, I just started waffling a lot about Abu Dhabi. So yeah, I guess we
Okay,
can start again.
okay, where did we get up to?
Did we get up to the end of Saudi?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
we
No,
said Bottas over.
I can still hear you. You said something about Verstappen demanding a place back.
Oh yeah, you could hear me. Yeah, yeah. I was just waffling about
Yeah. Uh, I assume you're talking about Hamilton Verstappen on the opening lap where Hamilton took the dodgy line.
that. Yep,
Verstappen demands the place back, but
yep,
the stewards are like, "Yeah, now we're good," um,
yeah,
and proceeded to go ahead and smoke some whatever they smoke for the rest of the race. And that
yeah.
was very evident as oh, I just hit my desk. That was very evident as in the last few laps, Nicholas Latifi, my guy, greatest of all time, crashed out. This brought out a safety car, um, and initially Massey, halfway through his crack, was just like, "Yeah, no, we're not gonna let the lap cars overtake." And like a lap later, he's like, "Alright, you know what? All the cars between just Hamilton and Verstappen are allowed to overtake." And at this point, I'm like, "That's not how it works," because like you can't just
Yeah,
yeah,
literally, Michael Massey. If your aim is to make it less evident that you want a championship fight, if you want to make it less evident, let everyone unlap themselves, not just the people from Verstappen to Hamilton. Let everyone unlap themselves so it becomes less obvious.
yeah. But I mean, this was the most like blatantly obvious way of like Massey wanting like a championship fight. And this is not the way to do it. You let all of them through or none of them through. I mean, I know we're slandering him a lot, but like, you shouldn't be doing this. But yeah, one lap to go. Verstappen's pitted. He's on fresh. Oh, he's on softs. Verstappen, Hamilton's on old hards. It was gonna go down all the way to the wire. So yeah. And I feel like the track improvements really helped with this. So Verstappen goes for a move on the inside into the new turn 4, I believe, Siraj?
Five,
5,
five.
same thing. Um, but, and yeah, Hamilton tries to go around the outside, but this doesn't work out. But he does have a good slipstream for the second straight. Tries it around the outside again. Verstappen defends amazingly and cruises to get um his cruises for back-to-back wins at Abu Dhabi and a world championship in 2021. And I was doing like weird stuff with my sitting position at this point. Yeah, I was standing up, I was sitting down, I was kneeling, I had my hands on my mouth. Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, it's quite fun to watch. If if anyone who doesn't like F1, if you want to watch one lap in your entire life to do with F1, this is the lap to watch, honestly. If you know the context, this becomes one of the best laps of all time.
Yeah, I mean, we watched this in our class in school, and
Yep.
for some context, Siraj and I are the only people that watch F1. Um, and everyone was like properly gripped. Um, so yeah, that was an insane loss lap. And GG's to Verstappen. Amazing season, amazing drive. But also Hamilton. Hamilton also had a really amazing season. So yeah, I mean, it's just such a shame that the stewards had to intervene like that. But yeah, Siraj, any more thoughts?
As I said at the start, maybe one of the best seasons. As I said, I've been watching F1 for 3 years. One of the best seasons I've ever seen. And yeah, I think as I'm just echoing what you said, Verstappen really deserved, this championship win. Even like the first race he drove for Toro Rosso all the way back in, what was it, 2015? And then the first race he joined Red Bull at 2016 in the Spanish Grand Prix, which he ended up winning. From there, I think everyone was like, oh, you know what? If this kid has a good car, he was literally a kid at that time. He couldn't even drive to his own Grand Prix. Literally, like, everyone was like, if this kid gets a good car, then he can win, like, win. And I think we saw that this year when the Red Bull was really competitive with the Mercedes. We ended up seeing Max managing, however close it got, however controversial it got. I think Max deserved it. And yeah, again, an amazing season for everyone to watch.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, people would say, "Oh, it just feels like yesterday that Verstappen was in that Toro Rosso," but it really doesn't. I feel like Verstappen has worked years for this to happen. I think a lot of it was down to the car just not being to the level of the Mercedes or the Ferrari. Um, but yeah, there are no words to say. I mean, Siraj, the season as a whole, how was it for you?
11 out of 10. Honestly,
Yeah, same.
if I said that I expected more from this season, I'd be lying. Yes, there may have been some boring races, but France is naturally boring. You can't ask for more. Even France was mediocrely interesting because there was some strategy calls. Same with Spain. And yeah, I think that was the like if you told someone get the most action-packed season you ever could and compile it together, this is your result.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this season had everything. It had politics, it had people within politics being on drugs, it had drivers on drugs, it had tires on drugs, it had everyone on drugs. And I feel like that's what's most important for all of us, isn't that right, Siraj? And on that note, that is all for today's episode. If you did enjoy, then be sure to follow us on Spotify. We're now available on there. And if you're watching on YouTube, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content in the future. Um, I've been B1M44. He's been Sir Sid. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.